Voice of the New York Giants, Bob Papa with Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team. And Bob, thanks for joining us today. Tom Coughlin, earlier this week, said this.
They've got to extend themselves this time of the year. If it's that important to them, extend yourselves. And by that I mean, hey, go to the office early, stay late, make sure you're responsible for your assignments, make sure you're prepared, make sure you know the guy you're going to play against, do everything in your power. We're in December now.
Hey, Bob, what do you make of those words from Tom Coughlin this week?
I think he was really disappointed in his team for the way they played against Washington. I mean, you had all that great momentum coming off the close, heartbreaking New England loss. You had a bye week, and then the Giants go out and they lay an egg in Washington. And they didn't play with the same kind of intensity. And I think, he's got a lot of young players on this team, and I think he was sending a very loud reminder that this is professional football and you need to get it into extra gear here if you want to make the playoffs.
Bob, is this abnormal for Tom Coughlin to do this? Have you seen him have to deliver this message before this time of year?
Yeah, I mean, he had to do it in 2011. They were in a similar situation, 7-7, playing the Jets on Christmas Eve, and then they got the big win, and the rest, as they say, is history. So, listen, he's had to go to this well. I mean, it happened in 2012, and it was a similar scenario where they had a chance to eliminate Washington the first weekend of December and get the series sweep. And they went down to Washington, and they lost 17-16 on a game that they could have won about 12 different ways. So, and they wound up not making the playoffs as defending Super Bowl champs. So, yeah, he's had to do this, but I mean, it's a lot of different players that he's preaching this message to.
Bob Papa, voice of the Giants with Armen and Levack, 104.5 The Team.
Bob, your best guess. What does the future hold for Tom Coughlin?
Look, the Giants are very patient. They're very conservative. They're very understanding. They take a lot of the factors into play before they make decisions. They don't go off fan reaction or media reaction. But, I mean, they've been pretty outspoken about the fact that they don't like missing the playoffs, and they've missed the playoffs in the last 3 years, and they don't want to make it 4 in a row. But I think it really depends on how these last 5 games play out. I mean, it's very hard to project. I mean, if they were to lose on Sunday, as an example, and lose, a heartbreaker, 30-28 on a last-second field goal or something, but they played well, you got to take that into consideration too, and you got to look at what you have with your roster. So I think it's really hard to call at this point.
Is there a way you would go as far as to say that his future could be on the line this Sunday?
Well, I mean, gosh, it feels like we've been down that road and gone to that well so many times. I guess you can make that case because it looks like this was a division that was going to be gift wrapped, considering what the injuries were in Dallas, the disarray in Philadelphia, and Washington being middle of the pack. And the Giants have had their quarterback healthy all year, and they've lost 4 games this year in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes or less to go, which is the most in the NFL. It's the most in franchise history. So I think there is a lot of heat on everybody to kind of get it righted.
Bob Papa, voice of the Giants with Armen and Levack. Bob, you're around the Giants every single day. Tell us about young offensive coordinator Ben McAdoo. How close do you feel like he is to becoming a head coach in the NFL?
I think he's growing I think he's growing as a coach. I mean, I think there's been a big jump between last year and this year as far as how he's improved. From what I understand, he's pretty good in front of the team. We're not allowed in those offensive team meetings, but having worked under Mike McCarthy for all those years and now working under Coughlin, I think he's gaining valuable experience, and I still think he's a work in progress.
Bob, when you hear JPP say that, I was drafted by the Giants, I want to stay with the Giants, is this a very different JPP than what we saw before the 4th of July incident?
Oh, there's no question about it. Because my sense was that I don't think he cared where he was playing as long as he got his contract. That was pre-accident. That was always sort of the feeling that I got, that I don't think it was that important for him to be a Giant, and I don't think it was that different. I think if the money was what he wanted, I don't think he cared if he was a Tennessee Titan, a New York Giant, or an Oakland Raider. But I think a lot of that has changed, obviously, based on his circumstances with the unfortunate accident and his career in peril, and the fact that the Giants, still were willing to bring him in and he's getting paid something this year, and they're willing to give him a chance. So I think his tone has really changed. I think he's also realized that this organization genuinely does care about their players, and not every organization does.
This week he said he'd like to be a Giant for the rest of his career. You genuinely believe that?
Well, I think so, because I think the friendly environment, and he feels like this is the best chance where he's going to make some decent money. I mean, let's face it, he went through a catastrophic injury. He's playing with a club on his hand, and let's just say the Giants decided that they were going to walk away from him at the end of this season and not try to work out a deal. I mean, what kind of market is there for the guy? I mean,
right.
It's not like he's come back and he's gotten 4 sacks in 4 games, and he's the same player that he was pre 2012. So I think it's one of those situations where it would be pretty convenient and wise of him to start beating that drum, because this is probably the best place that he has to make a decent living moving forward.
Bob Papa, voice of the Giants, with Armen and Levack, 104.5 The Team. Giants, Jets this Sunday, kickoff at 1 o'clock. Bob, how do the Giants beat the Jets?
The way they've won their other games, they've got to force turnovers. They have to be opportunistic. I mean, we've seen in games this year. I mean, when they don't turn the opposition over, they're 1-2. They lost last week and they lost to Atlanta. They didn't get any turnovers. They won San Francisco when they didn't get any turnovers. But this is a team that they're not really good enough to play you straight up because there's just a lot of deficiencies on the roster and there's a lot of injuries that they're dealing with. So they've got to make the game a little bit messy. They've got to get a couple of interceptions. They've got to force a fumble. They've got to create that sudden change. They've gotten 4 defensive scores this year. That's how they win this football game, because, if you just go man-to-man across the board, the Jets have more talent than the Giants as they're configured right now. But obviously the Giants have a huge edge at the quarterback position with Eli Manning, and Odell Beckham Jr. is obviously a game breaker. But Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker, that's a really good combination. I mean, they've combined for 17 touchdown catches this year, and they're pretty strong. But I think everybody's getting all swept up about how the Jets are at 6-5 right now, and they're coming off this impressive win against Miami. Look, the Jets are 2-4 in their last 6 games, just like the Giants are. So they barely beat Jacksonville. They lost to Oakland. They lost to Houston, to a third-string quarterback. So they're not without their warts either.
When you look at this Giants team, where's the running game? Why can't they get the running game going, Bob?
Well, you got to look at the O-line. I mean, that has been a recurring problem for the last couple of years, and they thought they made some additions to help it. Obviously, drafting Eric Flowers, Weston Richburg in his second year, Pugh moving to left guard, but Richburg and Pugh have been hurt. They missed the last game. Jeff Schwartz got hurt in the last game. So now you're trying to play with a rookie 7th-round pick at right guard. Marshall Newhouse has been, a journeyman player in his career. It's not like he's one of the top-level offensive tackles, and now he's hurt. So you're using just a lot of retreads and young guys with no experience, and it's hard to run the football when that's what your offensive line looks like.
Bob Papa, voice of the Giants. So, Bob, with the offensive line banged up as much as they are, as you just told that story, should our expectations now be altered of the Giants moving forward because of the offensive line banged up?
No, not really, because they had issues. When they had what was their starting offensive line for the most part this season, when you had Flowers and Pugh and Richburg and Schwartz and Newhouse, they're still last in the league in running. And they're not good run blockers. They're not physical enough at the point of attack, and they get pushed off the ball too much. So I don't think your expectations need to change that much, because they were last with their starters. They can be last without their starters.
Bob Papa, voice of the Giants. Now, Bob, we had this conversation with Jeff Schwartz. We have Jeff Schwartz on our show every week. Steve Tisch last week told TMZ that for Christmas presents for the team, he has paid up to $25,000 to $30,000 for players. We asked Schwartz, and he couldn't even remember what he's gotten from the Giants as a Christmas gift. Do you remember what kind of gifts specifically Tisch has given the team in the past?
I do not. That's sort of a players only kind of deal. So I don't even know what they've gotten in the past, but I'm sure it's not cheap.
It's like a nice Volvo.
Bob, you're the voice. You should be getting a big present.
Yeah, what do you get from Tisch, Bob?
He signs the paycheck.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, that weekly gift. That's a good one.
It's a thankful man right there, fresh off of Thanksgiving.
That works.
Bob Papa, voice of the Giants. Bob, we love your work, and thank you so much for your time today. We'll talk to you soon.
Anytime, guys. Have a great day.
Yes,
You
sir.
too.